I'm Glenda. The sun is setting, casting a warm golden glow over the garden. I'm sitting on the porch, sipping my tea, and the house around me is quiet. For the first time in what feels like an eternity, I feel at peace. The walls seem to breathe, and every corner holds memories of a life well lived. Just a few months ago, it was a completely different story. I remember that fateful Saturday like it was yesterday. The sky was so clear it looked brand new, as if the world was giving me a fresh start. I'd woken up early, made a pot of coffee, and set the dining room table with the china that had been boxed away for ages. By 10 o'clock, the doorbell rang. My daughters, Ava and Bella, arrived with their husbands and kids. They looked worried, as if they'd been waiting for this moment for years. "Mom, what's going on?" Ava asked. "You'll see," I told her. "Just sit tight." Then, there was Vivian, my daughter-in-law, clutching her purse like a shield. She gave me a long, searching look but didn't say a word. Behind her came Mr. Thompson, an attorney I'd known since he was a young boy in my class. He was wearing a dark suit, exuding the calm confidence of someone who'd spent a lifetime in courtrooms. Beside him was a notary in a gray jacket. The sound of laughter drifted from the kitchen. My son, Ethan, and Vivian were still having breakfast, completely unaware of what was about to happen. When they walked into the living room and saw everyone assembled, Vivian's face froze. "What is this?" she asked, her tone already defensive. "It's a family meeting." "Please sit down," I said. There was a firmness in my voice that left no room for argument. Ethan guided Vivian to the couch, and the children ran off to the backyard. Once the house was quiet, I began. "I've gathered you all here because there's been confusion about who this house belongs to and what's been happening inside it." Vivian folded her arms. "Glenda, if this is about the pantry." I cut her off. "It's about a lot more than a pantry." Mr. Thompson opened his briefcase and laid a stack of documents on the table, copies of the deed, utility bills, and a small digital recorder. "Vivian," I said, turning to her. "Do you recognize this voice?" Mr. Thompson pressed play, and her voice filled the room. Sharp, impatient, and unmistakable. "She's impossible to live with. Once we get her to sign power of attorney, we can refinance the house. It's better for everyone." The silence that followed was suffocating. Ethan's shoulders sagged, and Vivian's face went pale. "This isn't what it sounds like," she stammered. "We were just plotting," I said softly. "You can call it what you like. I call it betrayal." Mr. Thompson stepped forward. "Mrs. Glenda has full ownership of this property. Any attempt to gain control without her consent would be considered fraud and coercion. We've documented everything." Ethan rubbed his forehead. "Mom, we didn't mean." I held up a hand. "Don't lie to me, Ethan. You borrowed $85,000 to buy a house that never existed. That money became her car." He looked at the floor. "I'll pay it back," he whispered. I knew he would. I unfolded the letter I'd written and began to read. "This property remains solely in my name. You are welcome to live here under one condition, respect. If that condition is broken again by word, action, or lock, you'll leave within 30 days. You will also begin repaying the $85,000, starting now in monthly installments of $1,000. Once the full amount is repaid, you may receive your share of the inheritance, not before." I looked straight at Vivian. "You may have married my son, but you do not own me, my house, or my silence." Her lips trembled, and for a moment, I thought she'd scream, but she just nodded slowly, her jaw tightening. "Fine," she said. "If that's how you want it." Mr. Thompson placed an envelope in front of them. "That's a notarized copy, signed, sealed, and filed." The meeting ended in heavy silence. Vivian stormed off to the bedroom, slamming the door so hard the chandelier rattled. Ethan stayed behind, slumped in the old armchair where my late husband, Henry, used to sit. His eyes were red. "I'm sorry, Mom. I don't know what happened to me," he said. I wanted to say something kind, but kindness was what had led us here. Instead, I put a hand on his shoulder. "You forgot who raised you. Maybe this will remind you." He nodded, tears slipping down his face. "Can we fix this?" "Not today," I said. "Maybe someday." When they left the room, I finally exhaled. My daughters hugged me tight, their faces wet with tears. "Mom, I can't believe you did all this," Bella whispered. "I didn't have a choice," I said. When someone locks you out of your own life, you either wait to die or you find the key. It all started 3 years ago when Henry passed away. The house that had been filled with his laughter turned into an empty shell. His voice on the answering machine haunted me for months, and I just couldn't bring myself to erase it. The nights were long and quiet, and I was lonely. Then, Ethan and Vivian offered to move in. At first, it seemed like a good idea. I thought it would be nice to have some company, to hear someone else's footsteps in the hallway again. They arrived with laughter and boxes full of promises. Vivian brought new curtains to brighten up the place, and Ethan fixed the porch steps and mowed the lawn. We had dinners together, and she cooked these fancy salads that I pretended to like. Ethan even teased me for still having a landline. But little by little, things started to change. The first thing she did was change the living room. Henry's old leather armchair, where he used to read the paper every Sunday, was too old-fashioned for her. One weekend while I was at my friend Rose's house, it disappeared. "We donated it," she said, smiling as if she'd done me a favor. In its place was a sleek, modern sofa that looked out of place in our home. Then came the kitchen. My cast iron pans went to the basement because non-stick was healthier. My heirloom china was boxed away, too fragile for everyday use. She hung bright, abstract prints on the walls that had nothing to do with the warm, cozy atmosphere I loved. Every time I tried to object, Ethan would squeeze my hand and say, "It's just temporary, Mom. She's trying to help." But temporary turned into forever. My sewing room became Vivian's yoga studio, and the dining room, once filled with birthday parties and Sunday roasts, became their home office. They started hosting her friends, people I barely knew, who called me Glenda like a stranger and brought wine I'd never tasted. The first time I felt truly invisible was when Ava came for a surprise visit. She walked into a kitchen that no longer smelled like home. Vivian greeted her with that fake smile. "Oh, Ava, we didn't know you were coming. We were just heading out." Ava looked at me, confused, holding the cake she baked. "I thought we still did family dinners," she said quietly. "We just need to coordinate better," Vivian replied. "Coordinate?" As if my own daughter needed an appointment to see me. Ava left without touching the cake, and she didn't come back for 2 months. After that, my friends stopped visiting, too. Rose once came over on a Thursday, like she always did, and found the living room filled with yoga mats and loud music. "Oh, sorry," Vivian said, barely looking up. "This is my workout time." Rose sat awkwardly on the edge of the sofa, drank her coffee fast, and left. That evening, Vivian told me, still scrolling through her phone, "Maybe you can let me know when you invite people so I don't have to change my schedule." Her schedule in my house. Little by little, I disappeared from my own life. My name on the mailbox was the only proof that I still lived there. The worst part wasn't the things she took, it was how she changed Ethan. The boy who used to call me every other day now barely spoke to me across the dinner table. "You okay, honey?" I asked one night as he stared at his plate. "Fine," he said. "Just tired." But there was a distance in his voice that I couldn't reach. A few nights later, I heard them arguing behind their closed door. The walls in old houses don't keep secrets. "She's getting forgetful," Vivian said. "She's fine," Ethan muttered. Fine. She left the oven on last week. I turned it off. He said, she needs supervision. Ethan, maybe it's time we look into a facility. It's better for everyone. The silence that followed was worse than shouting because I could hear him thinking, considering. My heart pounded so loud, I was sure they could hear it through the wall. The next morning, I looked at him across the kitchen table. He smiled faintly, just like he did when he was 6 and tried to hide a broken vase. But now, he was hiding me, from his conscience. Something hardened inside me. The grief that had made me weak started to turn into anger, a quiet, determined anger. I stopped trying to please them. When Vivian mentioned rearranging the bedroom for better energy, I just said, do what you want. She smiled, thinking she'd won, not realizing I was just taking notes. I began to see the pattern. Every kindness she offered was a transaction, every apology a rehearsal. The house had become a stage where I played the old lady who smiled too much and spoke too little. One evening, I sat on the bed that Henry and I had shared for nearly 4 decades. His photograph on the nightstand caught the lamplight, and his eyes seemed to watch me. You'd hate this, wouldn't you? I whispered. Outside, laughter echoed from their room, and my throat tightened. I'd been patient, thinking love was enough. But that night, I didn't cry. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of the roof above me, the same roof they now treated as theirs. It hit me then that grief wasn't what was keeping me quiet anymore. It was habit. I'd been mistaking endurance for kindness and silence for peace. When the first light touched the window, I made myself a promise. I wouldn't let them erase me completely. Not in this house. Not yet. One quiet Sunday morning, the kind that Henry used to love, I sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the floor for a long time. Then I reached under it for the blue tin box. It was dented on one corner, and the paint was faded, but inside were all the things that still belonged to me without question. When I opened the lid, the smell of old paper filled the air. There were deeds, tax receipts, and the will that Henry and I had written 15 years ago. My name was on every line that mattered. The house, the land, even the savings account, were all mine. I ran my fingers across the embossed letters of my own name, tracing it like a lifeline. For months, I had felt powerless. But at that moment, I realized I wasn't as cornered as they thought. I remembered what my mother used to tell me. Kindness is not weakness, but weakness often hides behind kindness. So, I began to prepare. I bought a small green notebook and titled it Household Ledger. In April 2025, I wrote down every dollar that left my account, utilities, property tax, groceries, gas. Underneath, I added a separate column for Ethan and Vivian's contribution, which was only $200. The math spoke louder than any argument. I also started recording every phone call, every whispered conversation they thought I didn't hear. One afternoon, I came home early and caught Vivian on the patio, pacing back and forth on the phone. No, Mom. I'm not exaggerating, she said. She's impossible to live with. We've been taking care of her for years. Ethan thinks we should just get the paperwork done before she forgets completely. I didn't make a sound. I just stepped back into the hallway and pressed stop on my recorder. Later that night, I labeled the file May Conversation 1 and uploaded it to 3 different cloud accounts. I knew evidence alone wasn't enough. I needed protection. I found Mr. Thompson's name at the bottom of the deed. He'd been one of my 3rd grade students 35 years ago, a quiet, serious boy who read legal thrillers instead of playing outside. At Henry's funeral, he'd hugged me and said, "Anything you ever need, call me." I called, and he answered on the 3rd ring. "Mrs. Glenda," he said, his voice warm but steady. "What's going on?" I said softly. "I think I might be living with strangers who plan to take my house." He didn't laugh. "Then we'll make sure they can't." We met at his office downtown 2 days later. He went through the documents line by line, tapping each page. This property is yours entirely. If anyone tries to declare you mentally unfit or coerce you into signing over ownership, they'll need more than signatures. They'll need proof. And you already have it, he said, smiling just a little. You were always my sharpest teacher. I left the office feeling lighter than I had in months, but I also knew Vivian wouldn't give up easily. That night, I began acting. I'd pretend to forget where I put my glasses, ask what day it was, leave the same cup in the sink twice. Ethan looked worried, and Vivian looked satisfied. See, she said one evening. It's getting worse. I caught the flicker of guilt in his eyes. It hurt, but it also told me I was on the right track. A week later, I forgot my wallet in the living room and doubled back quietly. Vivian was whispering to Ethan again. Once we get her to sign power of attorney, we can refinance the place, pay off the car. It's all for her own good. The phrase "for her own good" echoed in my head all night. I didn't sleep. I just watched the moonlight crawl across the ceiling and decided that tomorrow I'd stop playing the helpless widow. The next morning, I met Rose for coffee. I handed her a yellow folder filled with USB drives, bank statements, and handwritten notes. If anything happens to me, you take this to Mr. Thompson. Promise me, I said. She frowned. Glenda, you're scaring me. I hope I'm just being careful, I said. But careful women live longer than careless ones. When I got home, Vivian greeted me with that sugary smile. Hey, I was thinking we should update some of your paperwork, she said casually. You know, just in case anything happens. My lips almost twitched. That's thoughtful of you, dear. Let's talk about it after dinner. I made her favorite casserole that night, humming softly as I cooked. She didn't know I'd hidden my recorder under the napkin holder. Every word she said went straight into evidence. By the end of the week, I had everything I needed: proof of the $85,000 loan Ethan never repaid, recordings of their conversations about a care facility, and copies of every utility bill I'd paid alone. Now came the hard part, choosing when to strike. I decided on a Saturday, the one day when everyone would be home. I spent that evening preparing. I printed every file, sealed the copies in a folder, and wrote the first draft of the letter that would change everything. It wasn't angry. It was calm, factual, and impossible to ignore. Before bed, I stood by Henry's photograph again. Tomorrow, I whispered. I stopped being kind. Then I slept soundly for the first time in years. Now, 6 months later, the house feels different. Softer, quieter, but peaceful, not empty. I've repainted the kitchen yellow, just like it used to be. The pantry door stands open, the shelves neatly lined, no locks, no secrets. Every time I pass it, I smile a little. I've started teaching again, part-time at the community center. It's nothing fancy, just reading lessons for seniors who never finished school. I love the rhythm of their voices stumbling over new words. It reminds me that it's never too late to learn something new, even about myself. Ethan has been sending checks every month. Sometimes there's a note. I'm working on it, Mom. His handwriting looks smaller, humbler. Vivian hasn't written, and I don't expect her to. They've moved to another town, started over. Maybe that's what they both needed. One Saturday, Ethan called. Can I come by? He asked. When he arrived, we sat on the porch in the same chairs Henry built. He looked older, softer around the edges. For a while, we just watched the sparrows in silence. I was wrong, he said finally. You didn't deserve any of it. I nodded. You're right. But knowing that you see it now, that's enough. When he left, I walked into the garden. The hydrangeas Henry planted were blooming again, their petals pale blue in the afternoon sun. I felt something shift inside me, a lightness I hadn't known in years. I turned back to the house, my house, and whispered, true wealth isn't what you own. It's what you refuse to let them take, your peace, your dignity. And this time I believe it.